Hi, so I'm Jo Bingham, welcome to my channel. So in this video we're going to be painting trees in watercolour. Now as a watercolourist I am very familiar with the medium, but even so I find trees a little bit daunting. So I'm hoping that by showing you three quite traditional approaches to painting trees, I've tried to break it down into easier steps to help you. And I have done them all in real time. So the video is a little bit longer, but I'm hoping that again you'll see my process and you'll see how I do this. Now, of course, we all want to get better at what we're doing, but the main thing with watercolor, as with anything else, practice makes perfect, but also experiment with color mixing. Whatever colors you have, just spend half an hour, just go through. And obviously with with a nod to trees, obviously focusing on yellows and blues, maybe oranges and purples, bring those sort of colours in on the peripheral and just see what ranges you can make that will be beneficial to you. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy these three videos and I will see you soon. So in this short video we're going to paint three trees in a traditional fashion. So my first tip to you is when you're drawing your tree, apart from your tree trunk, I only tend to draw one side of the branches because branches tend to get thinner as they get to the end, and that can be a bit tricky to draw sometimes. Plus you don't know what your brush is going to do as you start painting your brushes. You only need to draw one side, except the trunk, give that an idea. And tip number two is to always draw some ground in at the bottom. And if you're drawing a particular type of tree, just edge in the edge of draw in the edge of your foliage, but draw it very lightly so that you can only just see it. Just gives you, an extra help as you come to drawing your tree, to keep, to make sure that your tree actually looks like the type of tree it's supposed to look like. Now I've got a few greens and yellows on here. So I think this is hooker's green and Australian green leaf dark. So the top of my tree, the sunlight's hitting it. So I'm making that a sort of quite a yellowy mix right at the top. So you can see it's quite watery. So I'm going to use the tip of my brush and rolling my brush around in that paint. And the tip of my brush I'm using just to edge in, to go around the edge of my foliage, the top of my tree. And you can see that I'm turning my hand round as I'm going. And I want to leave plenty of white to see through the tree. So you want to get in at least a couple of rows in at that top of this very watery yellowy mix. By all means mix the colour intensity, add more yellow or even a little bit of green, but we're going to start adding a mid-green now. So as it comes down, and I'm just putting a few, before we go on, a few yellowy bits down here, because as the tree is coming forward, obviously it's three-dimensional, there's a couple of other bits where the sunshine is hitting the foliage. Now we're going to start making that a bit darker. So I'm mixing in more of the hooker's green dark, but also a little bit of the other one as well. So now I'm going to start putting, but because my paint's still wet, can you see how it's just running in? So can you see how you don't need to do anything? You don't need to paint leaves. We're painting an impression of the tree. We want to make the tree look quite solid. And we're not doing anything with the branches as yet. We want to leave a few gaps. Again, I'm going in with some yellow here. And then I'm going to go in with some darker green there. And some darker green in the middle. And then as I come down, we're going to start introducing some indigo. Now you could add black or a dark brown, but it's much nicer if you can stay away from black, especially when it comes to nature, natural subjects. So I'm now coming down to meet my trunk of the tree. So as I said, I've got some indigo up here. I'm just going to introduce some indigo. So there's a branch there. I still don't want to make my paint too thick. So I'm just putting a branch in. And then we'll have another one down there. See, even then I'm not staying in my lines, but that's okay. It's much more natural if you just paint them like this. We'll bring the trunk in. So you see, I've used no brown there. You'll find that trunks aren't brown. If you look at a tree, you won't be able to see a lot of brown. There'll be silver, there'll be greens, pinks, oranges, but very rarely will you see a brown. So I'm now just going to level it out. See how you've got the 3 layers? You've got very dark underneath here, and you probably have a couple of dark areas up here. I'm going to bring some more foliage in there. So you've got light, medium, dark. And then just a few, even though it's a size 10, you can get some nice thin lines. And we'll just put a few trunks up there. And we mustn't forget some foreground. Okay, so you can see the general idea. So just a quick recap. So you just draw around the edge of your tree and you try and get those 3 colours in, dark, mid-tone, light, to give it that impression of solidity. Okay, hope you've enjoyed that one. There'll be another one coming up in a minute. Okay, for the second one we're going to be using a sponge. So I'll just show you my palette. So I've squeezed out sap green, raw sienna. I've got some Australian green leaf dark, some ultramarine and some yellow. Now you'll see there's quite a bit of paint there. That's the disadvantage. This is a wonderful technique, but it's a real paint user-upper. You know, I've used tube paint because you need to have moist paint to do this technique, but it does go through the paint. So if you want to we all value our paints, but you know, if you're really careful with your paints, probably this is not the best technique. Right, so I'm going with the yellow to start with. We'll go at the top. Now you have to sort of press down quite heavy to get that technique, and try and make the edge of your tree random. In other words, don't go like a ball around there. And then a bit down here. So I've changed my filming to, you know, by the side, because I found that filming from overhead means that you couldn't actually see what the sponge was doing. So I'm now introducing more green. So I'm going from paper to water to paint. So you'll very quickly sort of find your stride doing this. And we want to leave, you see where it's very runny in here, so it's all running in. Bring a little bit of raw sienna as we come down.
you can't really see it. See how it does give a lovely random edge. So just like the other tree, the first tree that we did, we want to bring in our tones. So as we come down, we want to bring in really dark colours. And then just break out a little bit around the edge, you know, make it really not uneven, but you know, make sure there's lots of broken edges so that it looks like there's branches just coming out, sticking out from the tree. So this green leaf dark is lovely and dark, really good colour. And then the ultramarine adds a richness to it. Okay, I think that will do. I'm just going to paint the trunk. I think I'll make this trunk a little bit thinner than I did the last one. So when you're painting trunks and branches, make sure that your paint mix is quite runny, because you don't want it, you know, you don't want to paint dry, because otherwise it gets very broken and it just, your branches are at risk of looking disjointed and not very realistic. There we go, I think that will do. Oh, we must put the ground in. There we go. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you for the third tree. Okay, so for this last video we're going to be using a fan brush, and I'm going to be starting off using very watery paint and just putting in some very light layers. Now they're quite tricky to use, a fan brush, but they're great. They're quite specific in their uses. Can you see how I'm just using really light paint? I just want to try and get in some, you know, almost like, not pencil it in, but, you know, let's sketch in where I'm going to have the branches. Now, coming the other side might be a bit more tricky. And I'm sort of just using like half a brush for this one. So the top half is not going to be touching the paper. It's really, you know, if you get a chance, buy yourself a fan brush and just have a little play with it. Now as I come down, so now that I've sort of planned in exactly where the branches are going, we can start just darkening the colours up a little bit. So the random marks are actually quite realistic. with just darkening up a couple of areas. So now bringing in the heavy guns, the darker colours, start giving it some structure. But I still want some of those lighter colours to show. We'll just see if we can get some of the trunk in. I'll probably use a different brush to finish that off. So barely touching the paper really. And try and keep these light at the top. Okay. I'm just going to finish off the trunk of the tree now. We'll just fill it in a little bit, a couple of places up there. There you go, a fir tree using a fan brush. And I'm really happy with that, with the way that came out. I've managed to retain the featheriness of the branches and the leaves. So I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration, and I'll see you next time.
Hi, so I really hope that you enjoyed seeing those 3 videos and the 3 different methods of painting trees, and that by seeing it in real time that you got something out of it, and you can see that sometimes it's not a slow process. It does take a little bit of thought and planning into doing this, and I think that's really the key to painting anything. It's about the process. You know, the skill is obviously an element of it, but you need to plan the process and work out, you know, in what order you're going to do it. So anyway, enjoy, and I will see you on my next video. Thank you.